So today we're going to be talking with Noah Jackson, a bass player and cello player, composer, and music curator from Detroit. Noah's toured worldwide with the jazz master Abdullah Ibrahim and recorded The Balance, which reached #3 on the Billboard Jazz Charts. He's also performed with some legends, Branford Marsalis, Garrett, and Jazzmeia Horn. He's also the former music director at Cliff Bell's Jazz Club in Detroit, where he booked live music 5 nights a week. Led his own projects at the Schoenberg Center and Detroit Symphony Orchestra, received grants for his work in jazz and classical music. Also got some great upcoming shows we were talking about with Tyreek McDowell, Kenny Barron, and Isaiah Collier. So Noah, good to see you, my friend. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So we were just talking about, before we hit record, we got to save some stuff for the podcast.
Yeah,
Now, and if it's okay, I think that's actually a good place to start because musicians really do struggle with, no matter how amazing they are, established there like yourself, there is a financial component because we do have to pay bills. This is 2025.
sure.
And has, you going into the real estate world taken the financial pressure off so you can pursue what you want to do artistically?
No. Well, let's put it this way. It's just it's a different set of problems because uh first of all, thank you for having me here. I love to share my story because I feel there's a lot of value in being able to share the creative journey that we all take. Um I got into real estate as a result of the pandemic. At around 2020, as many of us probably were, there's a lot of things that were happening, a lot of things that were progressing, and then everything kind of like slipped. Like, I think at that time when you mentioned the DSO project that I did in 2020, that was actually my last touring gig from New York City when I lived there before I moved back to Detroit. So Detroit was like my last out of town gig before I moved back to Detroit. It's kind of funny. But before that, I was supposed to play at Chicago Symphony with Abdullah, and we were supposed to do a huge tour that year, and we had a lot of things that were planned, and then obviously things had to change. So in that time, and I think many of us had to kind of reassess like how we're gonna really navigate these waters.
Isn't it
And
ironic when the ball was rolling, like for you?
yeah, yeah, right, exactly. And maybe that was necessary to kind of snap us out of a collective slumber, the collective humdrum of just kind of what was. But I feel like about 2 years before the pandemic, I started to have think a little bit more broadly about what I wanted to do professionally, how to make money. I wanted to avoid the trap that a lot of us creatives get into in just picking options because we have to. I know a lot of teachers and professors kind of fall in that vein where it's like that's kind of like the one clear area where we can have a steady paycheck and influence too, right? Because you get the studio, you have institutional backing. There's a lot of benefit to being a professor, a teacher, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think there's like a plus and to that. There's a level beyond that where um where we have to think about how can we really reach our audience because in this today's day and age with Spotify, with the streamers, everything else, we really have to hone in on what our true niche is, what our true audience is. So that's not part of the question. You asked me real estate, but so basically, I got into real estate, and it's a brand new field for me. So, uh, right as of now, this is my fifth year in the real estate, but I've had a 20 plus year career in music. So I didn't need as much leeway to get back on the train for music as I would for real estate because it's just a brand new domain. However, as you know, in our world, like out of sight, out of mind too. So if you're not really
I
in,
want to run this back with you for a second because
yeah,
as you're talking about this, a thought came to me, right?
sure.
Uh, do you do you remember that place in New York called the Garage?
Yes. Yeah.
So they used to pay $40 per band member, something like that,
I
some
remember that.
ridiculous. And I remember I was like, well, let's say I play here 5 nights a week. That's $200 a week times four. That's $800 a month.
How are you supposed to live in New York like that? And then you get one low end transaction, and then after that, then you get paid maybe 1,500, 2,000 bucks. However, there's a whole other thing to that too. This goes back to your original question here. So it's just a new set of problems. having a real estate stream of income is beneficial in leveraging my abilities I've honed as a musician in terms of networking, connecting with people, understanding how to like deal with people's problems. Like you can kind of use those soft skills to build your business in real estate. But it took some time to get to a point where the real estate business start to actually feel like a business, where leads are coming in, people are coming to you, you're servicing people, there's a decent flow of business going in and out. This is my fifth year, and I'm just now getting to a point where like I'm selling houses and helping people buy houses. I'm starting to get more balance in that, get more inbounds from people, so it's not as much work, but it still takes a lot of work. Most realtors don't even catch their wind until 5 to 7 years in the business.
Being a musician is competitive. There's a lot of musicians who want to go do one specific thing.
Yeah.
Did you, because you had that, what that competition aspect is like? It's the same with real estate. I don't, but I would imagine like it's probably more a little bit more cutthroat in the arts. Did that help you in a sense, like having that, you know, knowing about that?
I guess it had in a very soft sense because I didn't really think of it that way. But the way you put it now, like yeah, like you get used to the competition, you get used to dealing with that because a lot of people when you're dealing with just like the public, right? uh when you deal with the public, it's a different kind of skill set, it's a different kind of competition. You're dealing with a lot more money actually because there's more people. I didn't realize how much money people actually had, like as a whole. And it's like because you're just used to doing the $40 gigs, $100 gigs. The scope is very small, but then you start talking to people, they really get deep into to the woods with that. So I would say that it's maybe I guess maybe it numbed me to that. It's
Well,
like
no, but it's also got to
there's
feel
no
like something.
competition because it's a different it's no competition to me. I'm not because I'm here to do business.
Yes,
I'm here. I'm not really competing with. I mean, I am competing with other realtors, but I'm
that's
not
right.
trying to be a realtor. I'm trying to be more like
Entrepreneur.
yeah, an entrepreneur, a developer in a way, and using real estate as a vehicle to help like kind of enshrine music more firmly in the cultural fabric of the city.
I love that, you're open and honest about this and stuff because musicians look at other musicians who do other things, quote unquote day gig or whatever you want to call it. They look at them almost with contempt. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's like you
and
failed.
it's bullshit. This is 2025.
Well, that's the thing, right? It a lot of it does kind of fall on like how we've been taught into the music because we've been, you know, I was fortunate to have a really great mentorship with Rodney Whitaker. He's a great professor at Michigan State, and he kind of opened the the viewpoint of thinking beyond the bandstand, thinking more entrepreneurially, but just in terms of like the actual like jazz culture, we don't talk about how do we make money other than just getting better. Now, there
Like,
is
don't talk.
yeah,
It's like they say, don't talk about it. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, don't talk about it. Right. Like I almost as a rule now don't even accept $100 gigs.
$100 gigs.
Yeah, I just don't accept those anymore because it lowers the floor. It lowers the floor for everybody. But if you pay people better, then you create a better expectation for the people who hire folks about what the actual market rate for music really is. And that's actually kind of what I wanted to do through Cliff Bells too, was kind of establish a new model where like businesses can still thrive paying musicians. You don't have to exploit them to make money, and I'm not to say that they were, but I'm saying in the grand scheme of how musicians interact with establishments, with clubs, with venues, the leverage tends to be a bit one-sided unless you're a bigger artist. And that's kind of the goal, right? The goal of an artist is to build enough audience and culture to create leverage to be able to play where you want to play and demand the pay that you want to be paid. In many of those kind of cases, they're not even talking about, I mean, some of them might be talking guarantees to a degree, but they know that they can bring a certain audience, bring a certain draw, they can collect on that draw, and that's a sustainable resource. But to do that, that takes a ton of headwind and a ton of resources to gather those kind of audiences.
At the same time, though, as someone who does other things besides play gigs, you must feel like that sense of like it's like escape or almost therapeutic when you go to the bandstand after doing something else. It feels good in a different way.
I would actually say it's a little bit the opposite. I would say that the bandstand is more fun. Actually, going back to your original question, it does make playing music a little bit more fun because you're not so dependent on making the gig to make the money. Now, there's a flip side to that too, where it's like if you have no other option but to use the music as a vehicle to make money, then you can either be really great at that or you can really fall by the wayside and not have too many options. When you put all your hat, you can put your hat in the ring like that, but also having a certain standard where like you want to be at peace as a person in your situation, and so you can create. That's a whole different conversation. I wouldn't be able to really have the mind space to think about what I want to do in advance and how I want to create or what kind of vibe I want or what's my overall goal or mission if my view is limited to how can I pay the rent next month? How can I pay my bills next month? How can I afford to eat next month? Like it at some point, those questions have to like just be answered. You just have to just deal with those answers. And it's hard to think about what kind of impact you want when your vision is so small.
No, I mean, like though, but now that you don't, it's different for you because you do other things. Like when you go to the bandstand, you take off that pressure that you had before. So there is also
Some will argue that that pressure is what creates the great musicianship too.
that's true too.
Some will argue like you need to like have limited options so that you because you play hungry, you sound hungry, it it makes a different kind of sound than what it would when you're just comfortable.
But there's also like the other side too, where it's like, oh, I don't necessarily need to be here. I don't, so I'm going to do whatever I want artistically, and I'm just going to let it
Yeah.
all out.
Right, right. And also it gives yourself leverage when you negotiate for gigs. Because now you don't have to just accept, oh well, I'll just do whatever. Like no, like I have a number that I want to reach, and this is going to be my number. And if I can't reach that number, I'm going to make my own numbers to reach that number. And
You talked about, oh, sorry.
go ahead,
Oh,
go ahead, go ahead.
no, you talked about exploitation. Like this one time, like I used to have a regular gig at a restaurant. It was just me by myself, $100, whatever.
Mhm,
Then like one time, like they booked me that I thought I was playing publicly, but it was for a private party, which they didn't tell me. And I'm like, I'm not paying for the private party for $100. So I
mhm,
walked out, you
mhm.
know. But granted, like, because I have other sources of income, it's like I didn't need to. I thought it was wrong. You know what I mean? What they were doing. So it's like they were wrong for doing that, but I didn't need.
Well, it sounded also like there's just misplaced expectations because if I was in that position, I would reframe it as, okay, well, what do you expect our benefit? Because I run a hotel gig too, actually here in north of Detroit. I haven't picked up a like a regular residency gig in a long, like a restaurant gig or a hotel gig in a while. It's the Townsend Hotel, and they treat us well. They're really hospitable, and
Beautiful.
sometimes they have private events too. But and knowing stories like that, when I started doing that gig, I had a conversation with them like, "What do you expect us to do? What's the expectation around uh our music, our band? Like, do you want us to function as like background music? Do you want us to be more of a show? Like, what's the objective here? What would you consider a successful run with us? Stuff like that. So that way, like if they expect us just to show up every week and then they're gonna throw things in there, then it's like, oh, we can have a different rate for private parties, right? We have a different rate for private parties versus our normal thing, and like creating an expectation ahead of time, such that like if they wanted if they want to do that, they're gonna pay us, or if they're gonna have private parties, just to not try to double dip like that. I think we have to empower ourselves to have the uncomfortable conversations with vendors about what our real market rate is. And we have to also understand what we offer to them such that we can we can give ourselves a voice in that conversation and really feel good about being paid what we're being paid.
You know, like what you're talking about overall sounds like about a sense of, we can't sell ourselves short, bottom line,
Yeah,
as
yeah.
artists and musicians, whatever you want.
Bills are
What
expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, when did you start like really like because it sounds like what you're saying is very like you've thought about these things in detail, even the way you just explained the thing with the private, with the hotel and stuff. Like when did you start to really think about say, I need to start thinking about it like this now, more business savvy in a sense?
I would say it probably started, there was an inkling with this, and again, also with real estate too, actually, about 2019 for me, when I started applying for the grants with the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council. I did a Duke Ellington project, and I did a double quartet. So I had a jazz quartet and string quartet put together. We had a panel discussion, talking about the role of jazz and how it's transformed the cultural fabric of us, and in doing that, I had to, call up the panelists, hire the musicians, come up with a clear plan, a clear vision of what we want to do. We have financial accountability that we had to have with spreadsheets and budgets. And in doing just that one project, it's like, okay, I might have paid myself so many dollars, but I don't feel like I feel like I put a lot more work into it than that. So does that mean if I want to make $100,000, I have to put together 20 of these? And if I don't have the time to do 20 of these, I have to pay someone to help me do those. And I have to take a cut of that to get okay. So that was, I had a great learning experience and was slightly overwhelmed by the fact that of how much work it would take, how much resources that I didn't have to get to where I really wanted to go. And it's not that I don't have the resources. It's that at the time, I didn't understand what the different routes to get to the same destination without having to, fork over a lot of money or time. There's now I'm learning that there's ways of doing that, but at that time, I was just exposed to just the general nature of business. And then I think my experience at Cliff Bell's opened my eyes because I got to be on the other side of the picket fence.
Yeah, and you're a musician who's booked, you know what I mean? Like, but
Yeah.
it's like I get I'm a musician interviewing people on podcasts. So it's like
Mhm.
it's another side that most like it's the same thing like some people who book jazz festivals. What do they don't do anything. The jazz, you know what I mean? They just book the
Yeah.
fest. They don't do anything musically. Nothing.
Yeah. Most of them don't. Most bookers are just really enthusiastic about the music. They follow up with they're super fans that employ themselves in the sphere of music. And I mean, who's smarter, right? Like they're the ones that found a route to like make revenue from what we do. It's on
Well,
us
I
to,
mean, super fan is one thing. I'm talking about people who don't like just are just in this position because someone put them there. You know what I
no,
mean?
no, I said what I meant. Like these people, you're absolutely right. Like I agree with you. They like a lot of people are super fans who get paid to book people. They might be put in positions to know people that might know who runs the festival or who hosts the purse strings to sponsors. And to a degree, there's some utility to that too, right? Because you have to leverage connections to keep certain functions alive, right? But um, having that experience in interacting with folks and what it really takes to build a culture, it's like, okay, well, if I had a huge pot of money to help develop stuff, I could do that. I know how to do that. But where are you going to get the huge pot of money from? Right? Like, of course, like, you don't think about how we incorporate other people and investors. I mean, that's kind of what a record label is. It's a fancy bank and investor, and what they're doing is they specialize in investing in artists that will get them a return, and they do that. And it's a great business model for them, and it's also somewhat outdated because a lot of things are democratized now, and so I think I thought long and hard about this and how I wanted to run the program at the time. And I wanted to showcase top tier talent. I wanted to pay people appropriately. I wanted to increase the profile and the profitability of the club. It was a long-term mission for me, because we were coming out of COVID at the time, so things were slow and to pick up and everything. So there's a lot of headwind that we were facing against at the time. But in that situation, in those situations, I learned, well, A, I learned I need to get my stuff together, and B, I learned that I could do it. I could book myself. I could do all these things, and also the importance of delegation too, right? It doesn't take much to delegate certain things, to make things happen. And this is where having multiple revenue streams come in handy, because then you can leverage that for the other.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean this is, and it's gotta must have felt so good. You're back in in your home base doing this, and it's gotta feel, just good. It just feels a good feeling of pride to do what you're doing for your home in a sense.
Mhm.
Let's talk. I know you got some upcoming shows before we, before we wrap up. But this is great. This means the conversation is moving fast. I know you have some upcoming shows with some of the best with Tyreek McDowell, who was this 2023 winner of the Sarah Vaughan competition. Kenny Barron. So talk about a little about those shows coming up.
Yeah, so I'm doing a 3-day run with Tyreek McDowell this week. I'll be playing in Blue Llama in Ann Arbor. I'm playing in Indianapolis and in Minneapolis. I think at the Red Wing in Minneapolis. And we got 3 shows with that. And then the end of the month, I'll be playing at the Detroit Institute of Art and Blue Llama with Isaiah Collier. And then I'll be recording an album with Russ Macklem the following week. And then I'll be playing at SF Jazz with Kenny Barron in early April.
I hope
So
you're taking off of work.
uh, just a little bit. And then in October, I'll be playing at the Rose Theater at Lincoln Center with Abdullah Ibrahim.
Whoa.
And then I'm getting married the week after that. And then after you get back from honeymoon, then I'm doing like a 2-week tour
Oh,
with
congratulations.
Europe. Yeah,
I just got married like 2 months ago. So
nice. Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful, man.
it's a good thing.
Well, when you're stable in one domain of your life, it helps you to be stronger in others. So, that's the other part too, is like having a foundation is definitely help clarify intentions with your time, and or just your intentions in general, your intentions, your goals. Like a lot of that gets kind of cleared up really quick when you have to involve, another person and try to figure out how you want to live your life.
No,
You
that's
know,
great.
yeah,
I'm really happy for you. That that's come. It's this year sounds amazing. Have
it's a
you
big.
worked? Have you work with Kenny? To a large extent
No,
before.
this is my first show with him. This will be my first show, and actually, I'll be performing cello with him. This show will be with Gregoire Marais and Elena Penderhughes. We'll be doing I think that'll be the season finale for his residency at SF Jazz. So I'll be playing some original work with him on cello with that project. And he heard us play with Abdullah Ibrahim on the road, because we toured together in Europe a couple years ago. Like our tour routing was very similar. So he had a chance to hear me play trio with Abdullah, and yeah, so we'll be doing that. And yeah, it's an honor too to be able to play with Abdullah, because he's a direct descendant of the Duke Ellington band. Just having and the impact of his music and seeing it and being a part of that definitely at it definitely keeps me from wanting to like sell out my music. You know what I mean? Like there's just to see the actual material impact that music can have on a society and a culture. It's like,
When you're around him, it makes you kind of you think that way more. You mean that?
yeah, yeah, you consider that more, in the things that you do. And maybe for me, like can be a little bit more hands off with it, like maybe a little less attached. So that way I can just continue to create versus like sitting on an idea and letting it cook. Let this put more ideas out there, put more ideas out there. So yeah, it's a privilege to play with the legends like that. It's not very often that you get those kind of opportunities. So I'm very appreciative that I get to play with such luminaries.
Let me say this: 2025 is the year of Noah Jackson.
Hey, hey, we're claiming it. We're claiming it. We're claiming it.
No, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Abe. Thank you.